Jonathan Demme said, how do you want to be seen when she comes down the corridor to see you in the cell? Do you want to be sitting on the bunk or? I said, no, standing in the middle of the cell. I said, yeah, I can smell her. And Jonathan said, you're weird.
More than 3 decades after The Silence of the Lambs terrified audiences and redefined psychological thrillers, Anthony Hopkins has finally revealed what most fans never realized about his legendary portrayal of Dr. Hannibal Lecter. Have you seen the film yet? In a series of candid interviews, the actor peeled back the mystery behind the character that made him a household name, and the truths he shared have stunned even longtime admirers. It turns out the real secret behind Lecter's menace wasn't in the script at all. The Hannibal method. For years, fans assumed every chilling detail of Hannibal Lecter was scripted, but Hopkins recently revealed that one of the film's most haunting elements came entirely from him. In a 2023 interview, he admitted that the voice and stillness that defined Lecter were never part of the plan. I imagined him as someone who never blinks, never breathes heavily, a man with total control, he said. He doesn't need to show violence. He is violence contained. That decision, made instinctively during early rehearsals, altered the tone of the entire film. Hopkins recalled reading the screenplay for the first time while in London, calling it the best part I'd ever read. He expected another detective thriller. Instead, he found poetry in the dialogue. It was elegant, he said. When Lecter says, "Good evening, Clarice," it's not just menace, it's music. The performance that would haunt pop culture for decades began with that understanding, that Lecter's intelligence and restraint would be more frightening than any overt aggression. He revealed that his portrayal was loosely inspired by HAL 9000, the emotionless computer from 2001, A Space Odyssey. There's something terrifying about calm, Hopkins explained. I wanted him to feel like a machine that can read your soul. The precision in his tone, the minimal movement, even the unblinking stare, all stemmed from that eerie, robotic composure. Director Jonathan Demme loved it immediately, instructing the crew not to ask Hopkins to soften the approach. But the real bombshell came when Hopkins admitted how little of his preparation involved formal acting techniques. I didn't analyze it too deeply, he confessed. I trusted my instinct. When I read a script, I see the whole film play out in my head. Lecter just appeared, fully formed. This confession surprised even veteran actors, as the role has long been studied in acting schools as an example of psychological precision. His process, it turns out, wasn't psychological at all. It was instinctive. People think I spent months researching serial killers, he said with a laugh. I didn't. I read the script twice, maybe 3 times. Everything I needed was there. He described Lecter as a sympathetic monster, a man of culture and taste who had crossed into madness without losing civility. That's what's truly terrifying, Hopkins noted. He's polite until he isn't. Fans have debated for years what made Lecter so hypnotic, but Hopkins's revelation reframed it entirely. The stillness, the quiet dominance, and the eerie civility weren't born from method acting or deep research. They were spontaneous creative choices that came from instinct and intuition. He also revealed one more chilling detail. During filming, he used silence as a weapon. Between takes, I'd stay completely still, he said. No chatter, no laughter. It kept everyone on edge, even Jodie Foster. The effect was so strong that Foster later admitted she avoided eye contact with him during most scenes. I was genuinely terrified, she said in a retrospective interview. I didn't know where Anthony ended and Lecter began. That unsettling realism paid off. Hopkins's Lecter appears on screen for just over 16 minutes, yet it earned him an Academy Award for Best Actor. When asked how he felt about winning for such a brief role, he smiled, "It's not the screen time, it's what you do with it." His revelations dismantled decades of myth surrounding the performance. What many assumed was a product of deep study or dark method work was, in fact, the opposite. Pure instinct, guided by a single rule: never show fear. If you're playing the monster, Hopkins said, play the opposite. Be calm, be kind. Let the audience feel the danger in what you don't show. That single insight reshaped how modern thrillers are acted and how villains are written. It also revealed something deeper about Hopkins himself, that his power as an actor lies not in the complexity of his preparation, but in the simplicity of his conviction. Had Hopkins kept silent, audiences might still believe the darkness of Hannibal Lecter came from research or rehearsed evil. Instead, he's finally shown that the scariest thing about Lecter wasn't what he did, it was what he withheld. But Hopkins didn't stop there. In later interviews, he revealed even more unsettling truths about the role and the strange aftermath it left behind. More revelations over time. In later interviews, Hopkins expanded on the mystique behind Hannibal Lecter, and in doing so, revealed that the performance had left a lasting mark on him, both as an actor and as a person. What fans never realized, he explained, was that the character's power didn't just lie in his dialogue or menace, but in how he occupied silence. Stillness is everything, Hopkins said. People fear what doesn't move because they can't predict it. He shared that one of his earliest ideas for Lecter's tone came from mimicking the way reptiles observe prey. "I thought of him like a crocodile," he said. "They don't blink, they just wait, and when they move, it's final." This image, quiet, patient, intelligent, became central to the role. He later admitted that during certain takes, he would deliberately time his breaths to Foster's dialogue, waiting until she exhaled before he spoke, creating the illusion that Lecter was literally taking her air. Hopkins also opened up about how he built Lecter's physical presence through restraint. "Every muscle had to be calm," he said. "If you're fidgeting, the audience relaxes. But if you're still, they lean in." His performance was not about external emotion, but about energy, an unbroken, watchful tension that filled every scene. "Demi said to me, 'Don't move unless it means something,'" Hopkins recalled, "so I didn't." The actor admitted he had no idea the performance would become so iconic. "I thought I'd play the villain, collect my paycheck, and move on," he joked in a recent podcast. "Then suddenly, everyone was calling me Hannibal." For years, fans approached him quoting Lecter's lines, "I ate his liver with some fava beans," and Hopkins responded with polite amusement. "I was grateful, but it was strange," he said. "It's like having a ghost that follows you, very politely, wherever you go." Interestingly, Hopkins later revealed that one of the most famous moments, the hissing sound after the fava beans line, was entirely improvised. "It just came out," he said. Jonathan, Demi laughed. The crew froze, and he said, "We're keeping that." That tiny, unscripted sound became one of cinema's most chilling moments, one that Hopkins himself hadn't planned. He also revealed that he never viewed Lecter as purely evil. "He's not the devil," Hopkins said. "He's a man who's gone beyond morality. He has his own code. Twisted, yes, but consistent." This perspective made the role more layered than the usual villain archetype. "He appreciates beauty, music, and conversation," he continued. "That's what makes him unsettling. He's a monster who enjoys Bach." But even with that perspective, Hopkins admitted that the character affected him long after filming ended. "When we wrapped, I thought, he's still in there," he said. "It took me a while to let him go." He compared the experience to hosting someone else's consciousness, a quiet but persistent guest. "It wasn't darkness," he clarified, "it was precision." Lecter is about control, and that control stayed with me. Hopkins also addressed one long-running fan theory that Lecter subtly mirrors Clarice Starling, reflecting her ambition and restraint back at her. "Absolutely," he confirmed. "That's why their scenes work. They recognize each other. He respects her because she sees through him without fear. It's a duel of empathy." He credited much of that dynamic to Jodie Foster's performance. "She was brilliant, focused, vulnerable, intelligent," he said. "She made the danger real." Hopkins noted that he and Foster rarely rehearsed together to keep their chemistry raw and unpredictable. "Demi wanted that tension," he explained. He said, "Don't get comfortable with each other," and it worked. In the years since, Hopkins has been repeatedly asked if he'd ever return to the character. His answer remains consistent: "No. I said what I needed to say through him." He explained that continuing to play Lecter in sequels like Hannibal and Red Dragon was enjoyable but unnecessary. "The first film was perfect," he said. "It said everything about who he was, the mystery, the elegance, the horror. Sometimes it's best to leave the monster sleeping." Looking back, Hopkins sees Lecter less as a role and more as an experiment that succeeded beyond his imagination. "I didn't expect him to last this long," he said, "but he did, because he's not just a villain. He's a mirror for fear, for curiosity, for control." These revelations redefined what fans thought they knew about the performance. Hopkins didn't approach Lecter as a killer, but as a philosopher trapped in a cage, observing humanity with detached amusement. It wasn't violence that made him memorable, it was understanding. Other casts speaks out. While Anthony Hopkins' performance as Hannibal Lecter dominates discussions about the Silence of the Lambs, other cast members have shared intriguing insights and reflections over the years, revealing the dynamics behind the film's enduring power. Jodie Foster, who played Clarice Starling, often emphasized the intensity of working opposite Hopkins. In interviews, she described the experience as visceral and unnerving, noting that his ability to remain perfectly still and in character, even between takes, heightened the authenticity of their on-screen interactions. Foster also revealed that Demme deliberately minimized rehearsals to maintain genuine tension, creating a psychological environment where Starling's fear and vulnerability felt real to the audience. Scott Glenn, who portrayed Jack Crawford, the FBI agent overseeing Starling's work, reflected on the collaborative atmosphere on set. He praised Demme's direction for fostering both discipline and creativity, noting that each actor was encouraged to explore character motivations in depth. Glenn recalled that Hopkins' presence was so commanding that even seasoned actors found themselves adjusting their performances to match the energy and precision Lecter brought to every scene. This dynamic, he suggested, contributed significantly to the film's authenticity and suspense. Ted Levine, who played Buffalo Bill, shared candid thoughts about the challenges of embodying such a psychologically complex and unsettling character. He admitted that the role required balancing horror with believability, ensuring that the character remained disturbing without descending into caricature. Levine also acknowledged the physical and mental preparation involved, including developing Gum's meticulous habits, obsessive routines, and eerie speech patterns. He described the experience as intense but enlightening, as it pushed him to explore the darker facets of human behavior in a controlled, safe environment. Anthony Heald, who portrayed Dr. Frederick Chilton, Lecter's manipulative hospital administrator, offered insight into how the film's tension extended beyond just the main duo. Heald noted that the script's attention to power dynamics and subtle psychological games gave supporting roles a critical function in heightening suspense. "Every scene mattered," he explained. "Even if you weren't the focus, your interactions shaped the audience's perception of the story and the characters." Heald's reflections highlight how ensemble performances worked in concert to amplify the impact of Hopkins and Foster. Over the years, many cast members have revisited their experiences in documentaries and interviews, often remarking on the unexpected cultural phenomenon that emerged from the film. They expressed surprise at how enduring the audience fascination with Lecter became, how iconic Foster's portrayal of Clarice Starling remained, and how the movie's themes of control, fear, and intellect continue to resonate. In combination, these reflections reveal that the magic of The Silence of the Lambs was not solely the result of Hopkins' extraordinary performance. It was the synergy between cast, director, and script, a carefully balanced collaboration that allowed each actor to contribute meaningfully to the film's psychological tension and lasting impact. These behind-the-scenes insights enrich our understanding of why the movie has remained a benchmark in thriller cinema for over 3 decades. The film's impact was so profound that it didn't just change audiences, it changed Hopkins' entire career overnight. Becoming a premium actor. Hopkins' portrayal of Hannibal Lecter transformed him from a respected but relatively understated actor into an international icon. Before The Silence of the Lambs, he had earned acclaim for roles in films like The Elephant Man and The Remains of the Day, demonstrating his skill for subtle, nuanced performances. Yet none of these roles garnered the widespread recognition or cultural impact that Lecter achieved. "I'd done fine work, but it was quiet work," Hopkins reflected. Then came Lecter, and suddenly the world noticed. What made Lecter's effect so striking was that Hopkins commanded attention despite appearing on screen for just 16 minutes. Critics and audiences alike were mesmerized by his presence. His calm, deliberate delivery made the character more terrifying than any amount of physical action could have. "It's not the screen time that counts," Hopkins said. "It's what you do with it." This principle contrasted sharply with his previous performances, which relied more on internal emotion and subtlety rather than commanding the entire frame with silence. Hopkins's fame after The Silence of the Lambs was immediate and enduring. He received the Academy Award for Best Actor, as well as multiple BAFTA and Golden Globe nominations, cementing his status in Hollywood. Fans began to approach him quoting Lecter's lines, often unable to separate actor from character. "People wanted Hannibal, and they didn't always see Anthony," he admitted. This level of recognition was unprecedented in his career. Previously, he had been respected in the theater world and among cinephiles, but he now became a household name worldwide. Comparing his work before and after the film illustrates the shift. In The Elephant Man, Hopkins portrayed Dr. Trevis with sensitivity and restraint, garnering critical praise but limited mainstream attention. The Remains of the Day showcased his ability to embody internal conflict and moral complexity, again earning respect but not broad fame. Lecter, by contrast, combined restraint, menace, and charisma into a single, unforgettable performance that dominated the cultural conversation, influencing countless depictions of villains in cinema afterward. The film also gave Hopkins creative freedom in later projects. With newfound fame and awards recognition, he could select roles more selectively, pursuing films in both independent and mainstream circuits. He took on parts that challenged him artistically, like The Father, while still commanding audience attention in blockbusters such as the Thor series. Yet, he noted, the shadow of Lecter remained ever present. "No matter what I do, there's always someone thinking, 'That's Hannibal,' and that's fine. It's part of the job," he said. Furthermore, Hopkins's influence extended to the way villains were portrayed in film after Lecter. His performance showed that calm intelligence and controlled menace could surpass overt violence or shock value. Casting directors began to seek actors capable of subtle but unforgettable presence, a direct legacy of Hopkins's approach. As he explained, after Lecter, people realized you don't need gore or shouting to make someone terrifying. Calm can be lethal. Even decades later, the role continues to define Hopkins's public persona. In interviews, he often reflects on how Lecter remains alive in audiences' imaginations, a testament to the combination of instinctive acting, precise control, and understanding of human psychology. "Lecter is not just a villain," Hopkins remarked. "He's a mirror, reflecting fear, curiosity, and intelligence. And because of him, I reached audiences in ways I never could have predicted." With Hopkins now established as a global icon, the film's breakthrough success further solidified both his career and the lasting impact of The Silence of the Lambs. From generation to generation, The Silence of the Lambs was more than a film. It was a cultural phenomenon that redefined the thriller genre and set new standards for Hollywood. Released in 1991, the movie combined Jonathan Demme's meticulous direction, Thomas Harris's tense and detailed source material, and an extraordinary cast led by Jodie Foster and Anthony Hopkins. Its success was immediate. Both critics and audiences responded to the psychological depth, suspenseful pacing, and iconic performances. Financially, the film was a powerhouse. Made on a budget of around $19 million, grossed over $270 million worldwide, an extraordinary return that demonstrated the public appetite for intelligent horror thrillers. Unlike many horror films that relied on gore or shock, Silence of the Lambs leveraged tension, dialogue, and psychological intensity. Hopkins's performance was central to this strategy, as his calculated menace elevated every scene he appeared in, making audiences feel suspense, even in moments of silence. The movie's critical reception was equally groundbreaking. It became one of only 3 films in history to win the Big 5 Academy Awards: Best Picture, Best Director, Best Actor, Best Actress, and Best Adapted Screenplay. Hopkins's portrayal of Lecter was widely cited as one of the strongest reasons for this success, with his performance often described as chilling, mesmerizing, and unmatched. Foster's Clarice Starling also received acclaim for her compelling balance of intelligence, vulnerability, and strength. Beyond awards, the film reshaped popular culture. Lecter became a touchstone for villainy in cinema, referenced, parodied, and studied extensively in film schools. Quotes like, "I ate his liver with some fava beans and a nice Chianti" became part of the cultural lexicon, demonstrating the pervasive impact of Hopkins's delivery. The role inspired countless actors and directors to reconsider how subtlety, intelligence, and control could define cinematic antagonists. The success of Silence of the Lambs also had a ripple effect on the careers of its cast and crew. Hopkins, who was already a respected actor, was catapulted into global stardom. Jodie Foster solidified her reputation as a leading actress capable of commanding both box office success and critical acclaim. Jonathan Demme gained recognition as a director who could blend artistry with mainstream appeal, elevating psychological thrillers beyond conventional boundaries. Hopkins has commented on the enduring legacy of the film, reflecting on how it achieved a balance between horror and artistry. "It was a rare alignment," he said. "The writing, the direction, the performances, everything clicked. That's why it still resonates." Scholars and critics have noted that the film's success lies not just in its scares, but in the way it engaged audiences intellectually, exploring themes of morality, fear, and the complexity of human behavior. The movie also set a precedent for how villains are written and performed. Following its release, there was a noticeable shift in Hollywood toward intelligent antagonists who manipulate and observe rather than simply attack. Lecter's combination of civility, intellect, and cruelty became a blueprint for characters across genres, from thrillers to television series, ensuring the film's influence endured long past its initial release. In short, The Silence of the Lambs was both a commercial and artistic breakthrough. It demonstrated the power of precise storytelling, psychological tension, and transformative acting. Hopkins's Hannibal Lecter was not just a character. He became a symbol of the film's genius, a role that defined a career, reshaped the genre, and left an indelible mark on cinema history. Yet, despite its acclaim, the film was not without criticism, both regarding its narrative choices and its cultural impact. The famous, terrifying plot, The Silence of the Lambs, follows FBI trainee Clarice Starling as she navigates one of the most challenging and terrifying investigations of her career. The story begins with Starling being assigned to interview Dr. Hannibal Lecter, a brilliant psychiatrist and incarcerated cannibalistic serial killer, in the hope that he can provide insight into another serial killer known as Buffalo Bill. Starling's mission is high stakes. Buffalo Bill has been abducting and killing young women, and the FBI needs a profile to prevent further deaths. Upon meeting Lecter, Starling immediately senses his intelligence and manipulative skill. Lecter offers cryptic advice and riddles, forcing Starling to reveal details about herself in exchange for information. Their interactions are tense and psychologically charged, blending subtle threats with insights into the human mind. Lecter's guidance proves pivotal as he provides clues about Buffalo Bill's identity, habits, and psychology. Although often framed as challenges or psychological games, that Starling must decipher carefully. Buffalo Bill, whose real name is James Gum, is portrayed as a methodical and meticulous killer who targets women for a horrifying purpose. He skins his victims to create a woman suit for himself. As Starling follows Lecter's clues, she uncovers a pattern connecting the abductions to the personal lives and characteristics of his victims. Her investigation requires not only intelligence, but courage, as she is repeatedly confronted with the psychological horror of Gum's crimes. Starling's journey takes her to Gum's home and workspace, where she carefully examines evidence, noting his obsession with transformation and control. Through a combination of Lecter's cryptic hints and her own profiling skills, she identifies the location of Gum's latest victim, a senator's daughter. This leads to a tense climax in which Starling confronts Gum alone in his house. Her courage and quick thinking allow her to save the victim and neutralize the threat, highlighting her growth from trainee to capable FBI agent. Parallel to the investigation is Lecter's own subplot. Though confined, he orchestrates his escape using cunning and manipulation, ultimately demonstrating the extent of his intelligence and menace. Lecter's character serves both as a catalyst for the plot and as a thematic mirror for Starling, emphasizing the blurred lines between intelligence, morality, and obsession. The film also explores the personal stakes for Starling, particularly the lingering trauma of her childhood. Her connection to the lambs motif, an early memory of attempting to save a lamb from slaughter, adds depth to her motivation and highlights the emotional resonance driving her professional determination. This element provides a humanizing counterpoint to the stark horror surrounding Buffalo Bill and Lecter. Throughout the narrative, the film balances suspense, psychological exploration, and character development. Each interaction between Starling and Lecter deepens the tension, while the methodical investigation into Buffalo Bill's crimes builds an atmosphere of dread and urgency. Dialogue and performance, particularly Hopkins's iconic portrayal of Lecter and Foster's nuanced performance as Starling, elevate the material beyond standard procedural storytelling. In conclusion, The Silence of the Lambs weaves a complex narrative of crime, psychology, and personal growth. Starling's pursuit of Buffalo Bill, guided by the enigmatic Lecter, forms the core plot, blending procedural investigation with intense character dynamics. The film's structure, combining suspenseful detective work with the psychological cat and mouse between Starling and Lecter, results in a story that is both thrilling and emotionally compelling, setting it apart as a landmark in thriller and horror cinema. Despite its widespread acclaim, The Silence of the Lambs has faced significant criticism over the years, touching on both cultural representation and the psychological portrayal of violence. Feedback and criticism. One of the most persistent critiques concerns the film's depiction of marginalized groups, particularly through the character of Buffalo Bill. Critics argued that the film perpetuated harmful stereotypes about transgender individuals by linking gender nonconformity with psychopathy. Hopkins, reflecting on these criticisms in interviews, acknowledged the concerns while emphasizing that the story reflects the source material of its time. He noted, contemporary audiences might interpret aspects differently than when the book and film were released, recognizing that societal perspectives evolve and the film's depiction may now seem problematic. Another area of debate centered on Lecter's character. While many hailed Hopkins's performance as a masterclass in acting, creating a sophisticated, intelligent, and terrifying villain, some critics worried that the role glamorized or justified violence. The concern was that audiences might be charmed by a character whose actions are morally abhorrent. Hopkins addressed these critiques directly. Lecter is not to be admired morally. He's a warning about intelligence divorced from empathy, he explained. He emphasized that Lecter's appeal lies in Hopkins's craft, the tension, control, and psychological precision, rather than in moral approval of his actions. In other words, the fascination is a testament to performance skill, not a celebration of evil. Some reviewers went further, suggesting that the film's intense focus on psychological horror occasionally overshadows broader societal contexts. For instance, issues like systemic failures in criminal investigations, the vulnerability of victims, and gaps in social support structures receive little attention. Yet most critics agreed that the film's craftsmanship, from Jonathan Demme's direction to the editing and performances, outweighed these shortcomings. The suspense, pacing, and intellectual depth of the story created a cinematic experience that remains influential decades later, despite these limitations. Public response mirrored this duality. Fans were fascinated by the film, creating enduring admiration and even fandom for Lecter as a character. Yet the movie also sparked complex discussions about trauma, fear, and the ethics of thriller storytelling. Many audience members were particularly intrigued by Hopkins's insights into Lecter's calm, calculated demeanor. Interviews where Hopkins detailed his approach, using silence, control, and psychological manipulation, helped audiences understand the intentional artistry behind the performance. This transparency offered clarity for viewers wrestling with both the film's appeal and its moral ambiguities. Ultimately, the criticisms highlighted a tension between cultural impact and ethical considerations in storytelling. The Silence of the Lambs was undeniably transformative for cinema, introducing new standards for thrillers and villain portrayals. At the same time, it prompted reflection on how media represents marginalized groups and handles depictions of violence. Hopkins himself recognized this duality. In interviews, he acknowledged that the film's legacy comes with responsibility, creating a lasting cultural footprint while inviting thoughtful debate about content, representation, and interpretation. The dialogue surrounding the film, both positive and critical, reinforces the idea that truly influential works provoke discussion beyond mere entertainment. Hopkins's iconic performance, the film's narrative choices, and the societal reactions they generated all contribute to the enduring complexity of The Silence of the Lambs. By grappling with these critiques and the film's legacy, audiences and scholars alike continue to explore why the story, its characters, and Hopkins's artistry remain relevant today. With acclaim, critique, and cultural impact all acknowledged, the legacy of Hopkins and his unforgettable role as Hannibal Lecter stands as one of the defining moments in modern film history. Hopkins's revelations about The Silence of the Lambs not only shed light on his approach to Hannibal Lecter, but also underscore why the film remains an enduring masterpiece. His insights, combined with reflections from fellow cast members, reveal the deliberate artistry and psychological depth that made the story so compelling. While the film sparked debate and criticism, its meticulous performances, suspenseful narrative, and cultural impact continue to captivate audiences. For sure, Hopkins's revelations help us understand how a single performance could transform a movie into a cultural phenomenon and redefine the portrayal of cinematic villains. If you enjoyed this deep dive, don't forget to like and subscribe for more cinematic insights. Thanks for watching until the end.